kindness is not niceness.
Hmm.
Niceness is more what we are taught to behave, like we have to be nice to other people, to pregnant. And it is an outside, it's something that comes from our culture to be nice. So it's not something that starts here, niceness. Plus, a lot of people are nice to their rude boss, to their dominant colleague, out of fear to be rejected, out of fear not to be appreciated. So niceness is fear-based. When you are kind, you can be kind to a rude boss too. But when you are kind, you can speak up for yourself in a kind way. You can ask people to say things in a different way. You can simply say that you do not accept that kind of conversation, that we can turn this into a constructive conversation, into a mature conversation. And at the same time, you can see that the rudeness or the aggressiveness is emotional imbalance. Somebody who has to yell or to shout or who is rude is simply, it's an immature reaction. But instead of judging it as he's immature, you can still feel compassion for that person because that person is in that prison, is imprisoned in those emotions, in that very, you could say, narrow focus and narrow view. So that's the kindness.
Are you tired of being a bystander in your own life? Have you had enough of mediocre routine and crave real, tangible progress? Are you skeptical about quick fixes and want more than just a dime store motivation? If this is you, then buckle up for a transformative journey. Introducing the ABCs for Purposeful Living podcast. This isn't your average self-help talk. We're here to dismantle your problems down to their core and then hand you the building blocks of success to construct the life you've always dreamed of on your terms. Meet David Thirimer, an award-winning transformational coach, leadership expert, and keynote speaker. With nearly 2 decades of experience and having impacted over 400,000 lives across 42 countries, David is your guide to substantial and lasting change. He doesn't just preach, he combines cutting-edge research in psychology, neurology, and cognitive science with timeless principles of leadership and success, ensuring that your progress is well-rounded and lasting. Imagine what it would be like sitting in a transformational retreat, seminar, or coaching session that took you down to the very core of your life, beliefs, and habits, paving the way for a more intentional and powerful future. David Thirimer and his guests brings this experience to each podcast episode, aiming to empower you wherever you are, to seize control of your life and turn it into something truly extraordinary. It's time to stop coasting through life and start actively designing it. Are you ready? Then welcome to the ABCs of Purposeful Living podcast.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our ABCs for Purposeful Living podcast. My name is David Thirimer, and I'm super excited for this next episode that we have coming up because it's the letter K, and we're going to talk about an incredible subject, the subject of kindness. And when it comes to the subject of kindness, there is nobody better to bring on to the podcast than someone who is considered to be a global kindness advocate. And so please join me in welcoming to the podcast our wonderful guest, Barbara Vercruysse.
Yes, thank you. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here, David.
It is an honor to have you, and I know my listeners are going to love you and the things that you have to share with us. So let me first give them a little bit of an overview about you, and then from there, we can dive into your story and about what it means for you to be a global kindness advocate. So, Barbara is an internationally recognized business and personal growth coach, as well as a mental health thought leader and public speaker. She is a guest expert at many prestigious summits and both as a participant as an expert speaker at numerous international conferences in the fields of compassionate leadership, kindness at work, and woman empowerment. She is featured as the #1 spot of the top 50 global thought leaders and influencers on mental health by the Thinkers 360 organization. So let me jump right in and ask you, what is a global kindness advocate?
It's a person who can see how the world at this moment needs more kindness, needs more compassion, but mostly can see that kindness has had for a long time a connotation which is, which is not correct. Many times people have seen kindness as some kind of weakness, especially in a business and a professional environment. So since childhood, I have been called too kind for this world. People would say, Barbara, you're too kind. You will never be successful. And I could never understand from childhood on, what does that mean, you're too kind? Did it mean that I had to be less kind? What planet had I arrived on? A planet where you have to be unkind or tough to survive? So, like most people, as a youngster, many times I would be called too kind. And at a certain point, you adapt very much to the world. You go to college, you marry. I started a business. And I got very much into the mold that we all get molded in. Like degree, marriage, job title, or business. That is your key to happiness. That's what we're told. So I went that way because it's just, and at the age of 32, when I was married for 5 years, running a construction business since 5 years, and our third child was born, Jean-Baptiste, he was 2 months old. I was diagnosed with a stage 4 skin cancer.
Oh, wow.
As you can imagine, at 32, that's quite a shock. And I was told I had 6 more months to live. So when you're in the hospital, like having one chemotherapy after another, I had several surgeries, you have that time to reflect. And I was thinking, okay, at 32, if this adventure would be over, am I happy with my legacy? And the answer was no. I was not happy because until that moment, I have lived up to the expectations from my parents, peers, culture. And you could say those choices that I had made were mostly unconscious. I just did what everybody else did and just thought, okay, that will make me happy. And it's not that I was unhappy, but there was no conscious intention behind the choices. So I made a promise to myself in hospital. And I said, if I survive, which was very, like I had very little chance, but if I survive, I will take this second chance in life with both hands. And I will dedicate myself to leave a positive legacy. And in fact, I turned back, you could say, to the calling of my soul. And the calling of my soul was to bring a message of kindness, not only kindness, but powerful kindness. And you could say, well, Barbara, how do you do that in practicality? I had my construction business. How do you become, like from owning a construction business that was in 2003 to now being 20 years later, a global kindness advocate? Well, it took quite some time because if we have that seed of passion in our soul, in the beginning, it's very fragile. It's not like we going to come out and say, well, now I'm going to change the world and bring more kindness, because people look at you and they're like, are you crazy? You're the business owner.
Yes.
So what I did, of course, I went back to my construction business, because we made, like huge investments, and we're still living in this real world. I might be a very spiritual person. I'm a very practical and down to earth person too. So I went back to the construction business, but started to follow, like read a lot on self-development, spirituality, psychology, went to conferences. I followed a lot of coaching certifications, because I felt like I always see the light in another and I can see the potential. But it was hard for me to say goodbye to my construction business. Why? Because I'm a driven and passionate person, and I want to deliver excellence in everything that I do. I will not say perfectionist. I think there's a big difference between being a perfectionist, which is more like, for me, outside oriented and fear-based, whereas you're striving for excellence, it comes from in you, and it's more love-based. So anyways, very difficult. Until in 2016, I was betrayed by 2 of my employees, and I almost went bankrupt. So I had to make a settlement with the Court of Commerce and ended my construction business with enormous debt. For me, in hindsight, it was you could say, a sign from the universe that it was over, that my place was no longer in the construction business. How hard it was horrible at the time, because I could not see or understand the lesson right away. It's there was at a certain night, the bank called that they wanted to confiscate our private house and sell it.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, oh my God, will we end up homeless? Fortunately, we find a settlement. It didn't come so far. But that night in my bed, I was watching the ceiling and talking to whatever the universe or God or had. And I was like, seriously? I survived the stage 4 cancer to end up almost homeless? What's the lesson here? And with the cancer, the lesson was to live a conscious life based on purposeful, soul-led purposeful choices. Now I got a deep realization. Something told me, Barbara, whether you are homeless or not, you are a worthy person. You have a lot to offer. And that strength, that came from within, was something that could never be taken away since. So I got an opportunity to work with BMW. And because I had all the, the business background, they asked me in the beginning, it was like a smaller contract. And it was, you could say, a little bit below my level. But I took it with both hands. First of all, I needed the money. I had to swallow my pride. But if you have some inner value, it boils up. So after a few weeks, they would give me, another contract larger. And 7 years later, I'm still working with them. We have a great collaboration. I do mostly everything around customer centricity, quality management, well-being, you could say, align well-being of employees, the high BMW standards, customer experience, align all of that, have the processes all aligned. So I'm loving what I'm doing with them. And at the side, I started, mentoring entrepreneurs. But back to the kindness. we just in 2014, when I still had my construction business, I started making, which was then still the most popular social media on Facebook. I started doing Facebook Lives, just showing up and teaching people how we can be kind and compassionate but yet very powerful. Because the misunderstanding is always, and first of all, I will maybe explain that kindness is not niceness. When you are nice, let's say you are nice, you see, like somebody smiles, you smile, or an elderly lady comes by, you open the door. Niceness is more what we are taught to behave, like we have to be nice to other people, to pregnant. And it is an outside, it's something that comes from our culture to be nice. So it's not something that starts here, niceness. Plus, a lot of people are nice to their rude boss, to their dominant colleague, out of fear to be rejected, out of fear not to be appreciated. So niceness is fear-based. When you are kind, you can be kind to a rude boss too. But when you are kind, you can speak up for yourself in a kind way. You can ask people to say things in a different way. You can simply say that you do not accept that kind of conversation, that we can turn this into a constructive conversation, into a mature conversation. And at the same time, you can see that the rudeness or the aggressiveness is emotional imbalance. Somebody who has to yell or to shout or who is rude is simply, it's an immature reaction. But instead of judging it as he's immature, you can still feel compassion for that person because that person is in that prison, is imprisoned in those emotions, in that very, you could say, narrow focus and narrow view. So that's the kindness. And since 2014, I started making videos, writing articles. I just finished my book, which is called The Path of Powerful Kindness. And it is mostly about showing people or make them shift that kindness is powerful. Kindness is an evolved way of being. When you have reached a certain, you could say, awareness, self-awareness, maturity, you can stay kind and still set firm boundaries. You can be kind and stay calm even when someone else is not kind. And you can see that behavior as not taking it personal. It's just a reflection from their inner state of mind, nothing more, nothing less. But of course, if you have people in your close environment like that, it's very important to always, first of all, take distance if you can from toxic people, from people who are imbalanced, with compassion, bless them. But if they are like leeches, you don't have to, you can just take distance from that. Sometimes we cannot. We have in our closer family, still, I would say, limit as much as possible contact with them. That's what I learned myself, but it took me many years because I always have been, until let's say 10 years ago, maybe too much a people pleaser. But now I have learned my phone, if I do not want to hear my mom, my sister, my mother-in-law, whoever is keen to claim me, I just don't answer the phone. And I have learned that to just, you could say, protect the space, protect my space, surround myself with people who uplift me, who even challenge me, who make me expand and grow, rather than people who gossip, who are narrow-minded. They can live in their world. For me, to keep doing what I'm doing, I have to fill my own light day after day. Otherwise, I would get exhausted. When we get exhausted and in imbalance, we fall into some default patterns from long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And just in protecting that, and we owe it, it's a form of self-respect to first of all take care of your own mind, body, soul.
Wow, I think there was so much usefulness in there. I mean, I didn't even feel the need to jump in. I could just literally let you talk the entire time. But I want to explore one of the concepts that you brought up. You brought up a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the concepts that you brought up was to do with kindness not being niceness. And just one thing that I'm hearing from it, because it ties into a conversation that I've had with quite a few people as well, is that the difference between something being active and something being passive. And niceness kind of seems almost like a passivity. Like I just need to be civil or whatever it is, but it's a fear-based thing, as you said. Whereas kindness is actually taking intentional action. And what happens is, what I've noticed, at least in my personal relationships and the people that I've talked to as well, it's when you start on the path of passiveness, what happens is things happen outside of your control that leads in the direction that you don't want it to end in. And so, for example, if there is something that's a toxic situation for you, maybe it didn't start off being toxic, but because you were in there passively being nice and out of a fear, not saying anything, not setting boundaries, not setting that intention, because you feel that it was expected of you to just be nice, then the situation becomes something completely out of your control, and it turns into something that now you have to get out of it. But like you said, with what you did with your phone, if it's your mother or your sister or someone calling who you know it's going to be a bit negative, you don't respond. But to also build off that concept of passivity and activeness, I think what also connects it is that from the beginning, you set those intentions. Like, hey, I need my space, and my space does not involve any negativity. So am I going to talk to you? Of course, but we're not going to gossip. Or, I'm not the dumping place for your problems. So what we do is we set those intentions, and actively we make sure that those boundaries are in place. So that way we can still have a good friendship. We can still have a good relationship, but it doesn't cross into these other areas that brings me down. And like you said, affects my mind, my body, and my soul, because these are the things that help you bring the best version of you.
It has a lot to do what do you allow? And where do you allow yourself to participate in things that you feel are not good for you? So I just want to set straight, I love my mom, my sister, my mother-in-law. And
it was never in doubt.
Yes, it's 99% of our conversations are very positive, but they tend to want to, just claim me some moments that where before I would feel guilty in not taking the phone. I don't now. I not an inch. And if they would start in, everybody can vent with me. If you want to vent, that's okay. We're not going to be fake happy, fake positive, or suppress things. You can vent. But once the venting is over, let's look, how can we move on? Or if there's a need for grieving, or there's a need for, nurturing, a moment of nurturing, that's okay. But not, in that spiral and make a story full of drama and negativity, which was not there in the first place, then I'm like, okay, we'll stop it here. But of course, and it's just, becoming the more self-aware you become, the more you know what is good for you. And it's not selfish to be good for yourself, because the better I take care of myself, the better I just show up in the world, and the more I can serve, and the more light I can share.
So it sounds like then that there are almost two functions of kindness, or two arenas where you have to practice that kindness. One is to yourself, and then the other one
Yes.
is externally. So internally and externally.
Yes.
So
Yes.
is it okay if we explore both of those? Let's first talk about internal kindness, or kindness towards yourself, and then we can pivot into external kindness.
Yes. I think it starts, the internal kindness is absolutely the start. You will never be able to be genuinely and profoundly kind to somebody if you have not directed that to yourself first. If you have not, and I think we all go or grow through that. I've had 10, 15 years ago, that period of intense healing, that inner healing, because we all have some, whether it's traumas, smaller wounds, larger wounds from our childhood, from our puberty, whatever we went through, we have to heal that first. And, with that healing, it is as if we have to allow that for ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. And that's crucial, because all those, if you do not do that first, you keep projecting those wounds into the world. You keep out picturing that on all the people around you. And the kindness will never be genuine. It will just be more like something you think you have to do. So first, in being that inner healing, that kindness, that patience, that acceptance that you're having a human experience, that it's okay to be flawed, to make mistakes, which are never really mistakes. It's just a label we put on an experience. I think when there's a mistake, or maybe, like a choice, which in hindsight was maybe not the best choice, okay, that happens. And it's a redirection, learn from it and move on. Because sometimes we need all these mistakes or these failures or these things to build something within us which is stronger, which is wiser, which like expands our mind, which gives us a larger perspective on life, instead of just that narrow, I have to be the best, the first, the smartest, like you leave all of that because, it's just too silly,
Yes.
where it's irrelevant even. It's irrelevant. A flower doesn't want to be the first, the best, and the smartest, nor does an oak tree wants that. It just wants to blossom. It's just want to be fully itself. So if I am born a rose, my purpose in life is to be, you could say, as much as a rose as I can. So as much as Barbara as I can, with the gifts, the talents, and, like the passion that was born in my soul. Unfortunately, how we have designed society is to say to everybody, you have to be tulip, whether you're an orchid or a rose, because the tulips, those are successful with the title, the house. So we all get that box, and we all have to undo ourselves from that, like later in life. And I think younger people, well, maybe they have the advantage that they can find that out earlier. I had to become, like first get very ill, then have my business failed, to really see, like, wow, they're still alive after that. And it's even more sparkling. It's even more profound. It gives you something that nobody can take away. That inner, like that deep self-kindness, that self-love, that self-appreciation. Not one bad word of somebody else can take that away, because you always return to that place. And that's important. whether you prefer to meditate, to pray, whether you journal, like maybe you prefer to go out running, to have that moment to refill. We all have our moments. So, and that's where it starts. And the kindness then will, somebody who is fulfilled, in balance, healed, has only one purpose. It's to have others experience the same. So whatever it is that you do, whether you're a teacher, you're a cook, you're a business owner, it's that extra what you have. You have that extra level of, you could say, humility and service that you want to do. On top of your professional skill, it's like it has that extra glow.
So how do people do this intentionally? Like, I noticed that you use the words, it has to be conscious and intentional. So
yes.
How?
Well, I have one very powerful affirmation that I use every morning. And it starts, whatever comes my way today, I will deal with it with kindness, grace, and ease. So it puts you already in a place that you know that you can deal with. If you're really, like you and me, into real life, running a business, like being married, 3 kids, really fully into life, we know that we can have stormy seas every day, and they can be very expected. But if you prepare you center yourself in the morning, say whatever comes my way, so you're prepared. You're not expecting that everybody will be nice. You're not expecting that everybody, like that everything will run smoothly that day. No, you will meet rude people. You will, like you will be triggered today. That will all happen. But you prepare and you say, okay, whatever is on my way today, I will deal with it with kindness, grace, and ease. And then it's more, at the end of the day, I would often write down situations where I felt that maybe I wasn't so kind, or I felt in some kind of automatic response. And just think, okay, is there a different way that I can deal with this? And be intentional, like you learn from every situation and be okay. I have 3, young adults. Our children are 3 young adults. And I'm human, not always that patient. And I can even be to my kids like quite firm. And they would say, Mom, I'm going to tape you now. I'm making a video so people will see the real you. That's what they say then. You're not kind all of the time, So, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay. I'm not a monk in a monastery who has a very, you could say, sterile life. No, I have those opportunities for kindness all of the time. And there are times that I fail. And that's okay. I'm learning every day. But the more it's like every habit, and I don't do it out of habit. I do it because it's just, you could say, it's my nature. It's you have cleansed away a lot of, you could say, thought behavior, and you just. It just comes like a purer and purer because you always put the work in it. You want to learn, you are intentional, and at the end of the day, you look back, okay, and you are willing to learn. And always, I'm reading a lot. I listen to books, I listen to talks. I fill myself with positivity, kindness. I love to read inspiring books about people who showed extreme kindness, who were resilient, facing, like difficult times, and still stay compassionate. So those are the things that all can help.
That was a wonderful tip, and I'm sure that our listeners will be actually quite happy to take that on board. I know some of them will. I would definitely try it as well. Start off the day with the intention, and then at the end of the day, examine how you did in reaching that intention and take it as a learning experience, because we're not always going to get it perfect. We're going to keep running into issues, but if we're reflective with ourselves and also, like you said, kind with ourselves too, then we develop the way that we can become better at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to just comment on a couple of things. So one thing that I know worked for me, because you talked about the process of just coming to terms with some of those things and just being a bit kinder to yourself. So one thing that I do, and for myself, and I've also done this with my clients, is I tell them to make friends with themselves.
Yes.
And a lot of times they're like, that's such a weird suggestion. I know myself. I'm friends with myself. It's like, yes, well, you were with yourself when every single thing in your life happened, but most of the time you were unconscious to it, because as you know, Daniel Kahneman tells us, like 98% of our decisions we're completely oblivious and unconscious to.
Yes.
And there's a lot about ourselves that we don't actually take the time to know or understand. Or maybe we do know it, but we haven't fully understood it. And so we're always upset with that version of ourselves or that part of ourselves because we haven't really practiced that grace. So what I tell them is that it's a process of getting to know yourself and just be friendly. And the first little while, it feels awkward and you're trying to put on your best performance, as we all know how the process of friendship works. And then as you start getting a little bit closer, you start realizing that there are certain things in your life that were difficult or hard, or certain sides of yourself that you probably really don't like. But then that's where you have the opportunity to practice the kindness that you wish other people would have showed to you, or that you would then go and show to others, because we have an easier time being nice to others than we do to ourselves. And so was one advice that really worked for me, and one thing that works for people that I do as well, is just get to know yourself, be a friend to yourself. And then when you discover those dark moments and those places where it's tough or where it's difficult or where there's rough edges, that's when you really need to be the friend to yourself. And that's when you do have the opportunity to show the kindness. I want to comment though on what you said about the kids, because I love that. I think it's really, really funny, because it ties in with what you had said just a little bit earlier though about how kindness is not niceness. Because I know sometimes people say that, okay, so if you're going to have to be kind, then you can't say no, or you can't not let them do the things that they want to do. And having kids myself, I know that anytime you tell them that actually maybe this is not in your best interest, so I'm not going to allow it, like, oh, you're not being kind, you're not. So how do you, first of all, navigate and know what is kindness? Because in some situations, a no is actually kinder than a yes. But then also, how do you get yourself comfortable in those situations to practice that kind of kindness?
Well, the more you practice, the easier it becomes, saying no and being, once you have connected with that inner power and that inner confidence, it makes it a lot easier, because you're inner oriented and no longer outward oriented. So if you say no, you speak up, you speak your truth. Even if the person in front of you does not like it at all, you can, from a compassionate place, still speak up and be firm. And it's for me, it's no longer difficult. Even in business situations, I'm part of the management team, and BMW, that's 90%, like male dominated. And it took me quite a while to really speak up in meetings where there's quite some alpha males, automotive, and say, stop and listen. Like stop and listen. So I had quite some practice to stay true to myself. I didn't become a bitch. I didn't become, like somebody that I would not like to become. But I learned to say, stop and listen now. I have something to say. And in developing that power, that firmness, and of course, sometimes I can still, you could say you can be firm. And for the kids, you see the longer term, and they do not always like it. That's okay. I have no difficulty. I'm a very chill mom, very chill. So they get a lot of freedom. I very much work on responsibility and trust. So they're in their early 20s. They're wonderful young adults. We never had like big issues, but when we felt like one would like go off track, we would very gently take him or her back close to us, like cut off from the environment that we thought was not really, and keep close, open dialogue, lots of love. And then they would feel like the love is there. It's love, love, love. It has nothing to do with wanting to punish. It can, in the first moment and the first half hour or the first day, it can feel as punishment, but then keep the dialogue open. So I think if people feel that the undercurrent is love, they kind of don't want to hear what you say, but they know they have to hear it.
So let's talk about that then, because I want to get a little bit into the kindness in the workspace, because all of this sounds really great and it's super good to do it for ourselves and to be kind with our families. So you kind of hinted on it, but how does one practically take kindness into the workspace? And what does kindness even look like in our day-to-day 9-to-5 crazy stressful work and everything that we have to do?
Well, it can take so many forms. First of all, like every room that you enter, you bring your energy. People are not aware enough of that. Like if we could see an energy, if we could see that. So the energy you bring, be intentional of bringing kindness and sunshine. Like you bring it intentionally. And then kindness can simply be listening to someone, who needs just a listening ear. Maybe it's saying those words that that person does not want to hear. It's not smooth talk. Being kind is not smooth talk. Sometimes it requires courage to be kind for another soul. It's not, like the being nice and smooth talking, and when that person is like caught up in an ego trap of, oh, my life, and it's all, and in some kind of drama version, you can cut the crap, and that's being kind and saying, listen, just listen to yourself. What are you saying right now? What is the story you are saying to yourself? Is that the story you want, the story you want to live in? Sometimes it's just asking a question. It's being there. It's simple gestures, and it takes so many forms, but it's real. Even in a meeting, it's when somebody has not done the work and tries to bullshit him or herself out of it. Just say, like calmly, like that's not done. That's not the way it has to be done. For next meeting, and you just say, tack, 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 we want this done, this done, this done. And not with, it's not always appreciated, but it's direct and honest, but in a non-judgmental way. And it requires quite some courage, and sometimes it's quite exhausting to be kind.
I can totally imagine. So how do you then do that as at a company level? Because I can imagine that it is something that a lot of people kind of need to be involved with.
When you're a team leader, you're a manager, you're a business owner, when you work some time with people, you get to know them. And some people to be, it's like being a coach, like some people in your team need like positive affirmation. They need the positive appreciation because they're very insecure. Other people are like arrogant and overly, and they need like, come on, like they more need like a tougher approach. So as a coach, like you know who needs which words to get out the best of that person. Because the arrogant person is not served with too much praise. He will not get, or she will not get the best, because they will be, like content, like, oh, look at me. Yeah. And the person who is not confident will need that praise and will not, and it's in those small things, you have those, that's one of the things that I love to do most. You have like those objectives, you have goals you want to achieve, and to really inspire and have people seeing open up, and you get even better results because you feel how you could, like approach each one of them, and that's kindness. It's just seeing what a person needs at a certain level or a certain stage. And of course, I'm very strict, no negativity, very strict. We do not gossip at all. So if people would come, well, and that person, they can vent for a moment. I say, okay, so what are you proposing? What is the solution? How can we turn in this? What's the lesson? What can we do in a constructive way here? And I think that's because many people, they just live from day to day in the blame and complain game. From day to day, blame, complain. And that's putting your power outside you. So, and empowering them, like for me, it's always the power and the kindness, empowering them, but cutting out every toxicity, negativity. Not that we become fake positive at all. It's not about that. If there's a certain situation which is not right, that colleague every day arrives 30 minutes too late, he is not, like taking his responsibilities, we address that. But it's in the moment, and you see that so much in management, when a manager indulges in certain things because she or he himself is not quietly correct in his behavior, that's things start to get very blurry. So strong and kind leadership is still rare.
Yeah, totally rare. And I think that's what you said. It goes back to working on ourselves individually. Yes. And reaching that space where we're kind to ourselves and we're full of, like you said, of that light that we can then go and share with others. And just from listening to what you've been sharing with us so far, it sounds like it takes a real paying of attention to individuals, because sometimes we can look at our team as the team, or we can look at the company as the company, or we can look at the people around us as, my neighbors. And, we're quite good at putting everybody into groups, but in order to practice kindness, it's so much easier to be kind to a nebulous group than it is to actually be kind to individuals. But it seems like at the individual level is where you will actually be able to know what is kindness in each of those situations.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's first of all having, if you have gone through that whole process of feeling, like good in your own skin, feeling fulfilled, being okay with having someone of your team giving you some feedback that you don't like too much neither, you create the space where it's safe for them to be open to you. Even if it's for me to get some negative feedback on a decision I made or something that I said unconsciously. It's okay, and we can talk about it. If it would be mean or vicious, I would address that too. I would not say it's mean or vicious. I would ask, why would you say that? It's not about judging the other person. It's more about looking, where does it come from? Why does that person feels the need to say that? But it's training. It doesn't come from one day to another.
Yes, I'm sure it requires a lot of training. And I think it also requires a lot of trust.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how does trust factor into kindness, in your opinion?
Um, it's very tied together. And if people, you could say, misuse that trust, well, it's addressed. It's honestly addressed. And in all my work with BMW, we have really achieved a very high retention rate of people staying. And that's because at the beginning, we really looked into the people who were, like you could say, more the rotten apples, to be brave and give them chances and another chance. But at the third chance that we would see there's no willingness to change behavior, there's no willingness to be a team player, there's no willingness, then unfortunately we have to say goodbye. And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's also kindness, because you're being kind to them and allowing them to move on to their career, but you're also being kind to everyone else in the team who were
to
perhaps
everyone
being
else.
pulled down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's to add to that, have you read the book Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni?
No, not yet.
Okay, so that's great. So Patrick Lencioni is one of the great leadership writers for the past many years, and he writes in parables. So he'll write a story, and then from the story he'll draw lessons. The five dysfunctions in a team is one of those. And he talks about how having a good, safe, trustworthy team where everyone's being kind and nice to each other, it doesn't mean that there is no conflict. In fact, if there is a lack of conflict within the team, it means there's an absence of trust and there's an absence of safety, because nobody cares enough to actually get in there and push for what needs to happen. But when you have enough safety and enough trust, and people are kind enough to each other and they feel understood at individual level, they bring their ideas and they bring their points of view, and they're willing to go at it for the simple reason that they care enough, but they feel safe enough to be able to do it.
Absolutely. And I think if we have, if you can, with your team, bring in that maturity, that we can have opposed views, we cannot agree. It's okay to not agree, but still to get along and to be respectful, which like 95% of people cannot do. Because if you would be, let's say, if we would be in the States, you're Republican and I'm Democrat, all of a sudden we cannot be friends anymore. So for me, it's a sign of maturity that you can have a different religious view, political view, whatever view on the world than I have, and we can still get along. We can still, respect each other. In a team, it's the same. You can disagree. You listen. And you play with it. Okay, what's going on here? What's the dynamic? And from that, you hear the rest of the team, what lives in the team, what will be decided, what's best for the organization, for the team, and for our, in function of achieving our goals.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up, because like you said, it is a problem, and about 95% of people nowadays really struggle with it. And I personally feel that it comes down to a wrong understanding of what the word tolerance actually means. Like the word tolerance basically means that there are other people with opposing views from you that you have to tolerate. But you can tolerate them and you can practice tolerance because there's a higher narrative or there's a higher value that draws you all together. And so because of that, it's like, okay, you might like things differently than me. You might believe things differently than me, but there is a common narrative that brings us together. We're all part of this team, or there's a common value that holds us together, that we're all going after something. And so can we put up with each other and our differences and still be kind to each other in interest of something bigger and something greater?
Absolutely. If we take it in the world, every person wants peace. Every person wants to live on a beautiful planet. We all want the same. We all want loving relationships, and yes, there are different ways and there are different opinions, but in the end, as you say, there's that common human value.
Yes, that shared humanity.
Yes.
And I think that eventually is the ideal. And that's not passive. Going
No.
back to what we started with, that's active.
No.
That's actively seeking out what makes us united. That's actively seeking out that higher ideal, that higher narrative that allows us to
I think
together.
The first benefit is for your own life. You go through life with so much more vigor, with so much more zest for life, because you are focused on what unites us. You are focused on your own power and what you can bring into the world. It's that active, like your vibe that you can bring into the world. So it's so beneficial for your own, like overall, not only your health, your mind, your heart, your relationships, what you radiate. You come in a room, people are like magnetized. They want to be with you because you radiate that positivity, that kindness, but which is centered, which is grounded, and which is powerful. It's not the blah, blah, nice, like, oh, amazing, awesome. No, it's something which is much more profound.
And then, like you said, when you are grounded and when you have all of that, then you're able to bring your best self, a powerful self, into every situation that you're in. And people are drawn to that. I mean, we can all think of people. A few names are coming to the top of my head right now of people that when I just want to be around them. They're the first names I look for anytime I go anywhere. And there's just something about their way that they're grounded and the way they're centered and the way that they're so living their I guess their purpose or their values, and they're so kind to themselves and everyone around them. You just want to be with them.
Yes, I think the embodiment is what each of us should work on most. So lead by example, practice what you preach, and embody what you teach. And that's the basic of everything. And people have a sixth sense for that. If your words do not match how you behave, even children, they learn from your embodiment, from who you are, rather than what you say. So it's like that with your children. It's like that with your, like significant other. It's like that with your team. People have a sixth sense. And if you embody that, since it's not so common, that's why people are still drawn to it. But I think more and more people start to realize how being empowered and how being, like that kind, choosing for that kindness and compassion makes us a lot more balanced, content, and fulfilled.
Absolutely. And it enables you to have an incredible impact as well. Because this is a conversation that I tend to have often with companies who are trying to change their company culture. And we have like this weird concept of culture where it's like this very nebulous the elephant in the room that no one knows what it is. So then I talk to these leaders. I'm like, what is culture? Culture is basically the amalgamation of everybody's behaviors. And it is repeated behaviors that have been encouraged, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and the behaviors that have happened in response to that has made your culture. And so if you want to change your culture, start changing the behavior, and then the culture will change. And so if there's someone coming in, or there's multiple people, even better, who are coming in grounded and coming in a feeling centered and from a place of value where they can shine their light and they're kind to themselves and they're radiating that kindness onto others, stuff starts to change because the behavior has changed. And so the way people respond to that behavior begins to change, and they start, they feel like they enter a space where they can be kind too. Because you give them almost permission to be kind to themselves and to extend that kindness to others. And I think if enough people do that, and the culture within an organization starts to change. Enough people do that, the culture in a home starts to change. Enough people do that, the culture in a neighborhood starts to change. And I think if enough people do that, the culture in our society will start to change as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the bottom line is giving the person in front of you, giving that person the feeling you matter.
Absolutely. So what are the best ways to do that? It's
listening, first of all. But some people, you have also to have that kind of powerful presence. Otherwise, some people would abuse your listening ear for starting to go into that blame and complain game. So you're powerful enough to say, okay, that's clear. Let's change that conversation into something constructive. That's making, like that's also giving the person you matter, but turning some default negative into making them aware what they are saying. So it's just they feel that you are putting in the intention and the effort there. Because it's if you would just smooth talk, and that's laziness, and afterwards go gossip about, that's what a lot of people do. They smooth talk and then they go to the next desk saying, oh, you know what this. So no, it's completely breaking with that attitude. It's just being, like that person. If that person really matters to you, you're not allowing him or her to go for herself or himself into that negativity, and to just, you matter. But you matter enough to me. I care enough also to always be honest, but honest in a compassionate and kind way.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that, Barbara. And thank you so much for making a difference to the lives of the people listening here. I want to be honorable of your time. So yes, I will wind this up in a couple of minutes. I just want to close by asking you one question, because you said that when you were in your 30s and you had in the hospital with 4-stage cancer, you said you weren't ready to go yet because you weren't happy with your legacy. So I want to ask you now, are you happy with your legacy, and what are you doing every day to live that out?
I am happy. I'm happy with my legacy, but now I know I will, like live until I'm 96. I've decided that. Oh, wow. So I still have a long time to go. I'm happy because if you live a purposeful life, it adds something that is not, you cannot express that in any monetary value. It's priceless. It's seeing the ripple effect that you create in others' life, and whether it's, for me, the real life, because it's easy for me to make videos and people saying, wow, that video, you changed my life. That's okay, and that's great. I love to do that too. But who is Barbara in every human encounter? Who is she in the grocery store? Who is she when she's, like calling for a cab? Who is she when she's going to her mom and her mom is like, oh, I'm, like this is hurting my elderly mother. Who am I there? Who am I in every human encounter? And that's my legacy.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you, Barbara. You're amazing. So how do my listeners get in touch with you? Or where do they find you?
The easiest thing is through LinkedIn. If they just type in my name on LinkedIn, and then they will find, like my website. And I think that's the easiest way to get in touch with me.
So if you're listening to this right now, please click the link in the bio or look before in the description. There will be details for how to get in touch with Barbara. And I can promise you that a conversation with her is something that's wonderful, because if you've been with us for this past hour, you'll know just what an amazing person she is. So Barbara, thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your definition of kindness with us and leaving us with a lot to think about. We look forward to crossing paths with you somewhere down the road. And thank you for what you've shared with us today. And to all my listeners here on the call, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this podcast. We look forward to welcome you back again when we meet for another foundational principle for your personal success, so you can go out and live a purposeful life. For now, this is David Thurmer and Barbara signing off and telling you have a good day and take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the podcast. Please be sure to like and subscribe. David is always eager to hear from you and would love to work with you in a more personal way. For more information, please visit our website at www.davidthirimer.com. That's www.davidthirumur.com.